Hello, this is James from the PlayStation.Blog. I'm here with John from Ben Studios. We're here to talk about what was previously known as Uncharted NGP, but we now know is called Uncharted Golden Abyss. So, first of all, tell us the overarching premise of this new Uncharted title.
Well, let's start with the title, Golden Abyss. So we wanted to come up with an all-new story, and we didn't want it to be a sequel or a direct prequel to Drake's Fortune or Among Thieves. So, we worked with the guys at Naughty Dog, pitched some story ideas. We spent about 6 months actually really working on story ideas because story is so important to the franchise. And we managed to come up with something that everyone kind of liked, and it's a standalone story that takes place before Drake's Fortune, although you do learn some really cool things about the main character that kind of sets up, where he ends up in later games.
So, you said earlier that it's set before the original Uncharted, but it's not a prequel. So how can that be?
Well, I think that's an important distinction because you can pick up the game and play it without knowing anything about the Uncharted universe, and I think that's really important for new players. And if we call it a prequel, then that kind of sets up the expectation that maybe you find out how he and Elena got on this boat and where the pirates are coming from and all that. And it's like our story's not about that. It's an all new story. It's got all new characters. If you've played the demo for the first level of the game, for example, you meet Jason Dante, who's this new character. He obviously knows Drake for a long time, and he knows Sully for a long time as well. So, we're sort of bringing, some depth to the character and his past relationships and kind of like, how he got to be a treasure hunter and how that was all sort of came about.
For you, what are the essential ingredients in an Uncharted title?
Well, the most important thing is, I think, again, story, because that's what I'm most heavily involved in. But, it's like starting with a historical mystery. And I think that's one of the things that sets Nathan Drake apart from other action heroes is that he's a real person. He has no superpowers, and he's not a two-fisted gun runner or anything like that. He kind of gets through things by the seat of his pants. But starting with that historical mystery, I think, is really important. And we have a really good one, which we're going to go into more detail about later on. But it's like Drake, it's set in Central America, and Drake is on the hunt for a treasure that everyone's going to have heard of, and then what he finds when he actually gets to the end of the road is going to be a surprise.
Ben, you guys have worked on existing series before, franchises before with Resistance. How do you strike the balance between sticking with the canon but also kind of putting your own stamp on it, if you like?
That's always a challenge, and I think that what we did with Resistance is we were able to create an all-new character, James Grayson, and told kind of a side story. So this is the first time we've taken a marquee character like Nathan Drake and tried to tell a story that that if you're an Uncharted fan, you'll be able to just pick it up and understand, hey, no, this is Nathan Drake, and this is awesome. So we had to work really closely with Naughty Dog to make sure that could happen. Not just on the story and the script, but on things like animation. So we have the Naughty Dog library of animations from Uncharted 1 and 2, and we're talking about a lot of animation here, like 3,000 plus animations to make Drake move the way you're used to seeing him move. That's how we get it to be super authentic.
And do you feel there's any need to sort of change the gameplay in any way to make it more suited to portable play? Because it's the first portable Uncharted game as well.
Well, we always try to do that. So, we want to build a game that's right for the platform. And so I think the things that translate regardless of how you're playing is the cinematics and the story and the characters. That's all going to be at the same level of quality and the same kind of theme and style that you're used to for PS3. Because, I think that stuff translates no matter what platform you're playing it on. But even there, we're able to do things like we have, again, if you played that opening level, there's this sort of banter going on between Drake and Dante that's a little more intimate and maybe a little slower pace than what you would find on the PS3, where you want to get instantly into the big screen action. And so we focus more for the handheld. We're focusing more on puzzles and puzzle solving. Along with the core pillars of the gameplay, which is the combat and the traversal. And then for us, it's about integrating the PS3 controls with the two sticks, which I'm happy to report that the NGP supports, just traditional console gameplay with that second stick. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how important that is. But combining that with things like the touch and the rear touch and the motion controls and the cameras, I think is a way to really sort of put our spin on the gameplay without making it too different than what they're used to.
personally, which of those features you mentioned, the tilt, the two sticks, the touchscreen, which of them kind of most excites you as a developer?
Well, I think for me as a developer, the 5-inch OLED screen is just magnificent. If you guys haven't seen that, I mean, watching it on a weblog or watching it, even video, just doesn't do it justice, because the technical properties of this screen are such that if you're not seeing it live, you're really not experiencing what what everybody's talking about, because it's 4 times the resolution, but it's more about the contrast ratio and just how crystal clear everything is. So, that with a combination of the two sticks, and I think the front touch is my own personal favorite, just because it makes designing gameplay so intuitive. So, for example, one of the things I've always had trouble with in shooters is throwing grenades. Because you have to use the left stick to move the camera, and in this one you just basically put your thumb on the grenade icon, drag it over to where and a little arch appears, and you can just drag the target where you want it to go. And I'm throwing grenades for the first time in a shooter as a player accurately and really effectively, and I think that would have been impossible without the touch.
And finally, for those Uncharted fans out there, and I can assure you there are a lot of them who read the blog, what's going to surprise them most about this new NGP title?
I think that what's going to surprise them most is that you can get this kind of entertainment on a portable device, because we have the same production values, and it's like almost no cost has been spared to bring the same kind of experience that they're used to. And so, for example, when they see Nathan Drake and they hear him talking and they hear him interacting with the other characters, we use the same mocap studio that Naughty Dog uses, and we use the same soundstage and the same level of script control, so that they really do get an Uncharted experience. Hopefully they'll be sucked right in and not look back.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.